And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore. We never sit out. We're your hosts, MD and CD. Today, we got week 12 previews. Let's go. What's the agenda today? Well, guys, we got 8 games that we're going to preview this week that all have either conference championship implications, college football implications, or maybe they're just good football games. And we just want to talk about them. We also got our Dirty Dogs segment where we're talking about 10-point underdogs that have a chance to win straight up. It's happened many times this season, and we've found a lot of them. So be sure you're tuned in for that. And also our best bets, which we're coming off of a winning week last week. So make sure if you like this content, like the video. It's a simple rule that we have here. And think about hitting that subscribe button, especially as we get closer to the end of the season when we enter bowl season territory. We kind of have probably some of the best coverage out there of that. So make sure you're staying locked in for that. CD, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. Very excited to get into this. I know it's a little bit later in the week, so sorry about that, guys, but we're still super jazzed, still super pumped to talk about it. I cannot believe it's week 12 already. It is flying by, and it's coming down to crunch time here. We got a couple more weeks here and then conference championships, but yeah, a lot of stuff going to be going on this weekend in November, and it's going to be fantastic, and we're here for it. And thank you guys for joining us as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a season of pretty insane parity. This is kind of like, this is our second season that we're covering college football this year between CD and I. And last year, there was not a whole lot of parity. There were some elite teams in elite conferences that kind of took over. There was kind of a crazy stretch down the rest of the way where you had, the whole Florida State situation. That did make the season kind of crazy, at the top end level. But really where we had the madness was, at the bottom level and some of those, other conferences and, middle tier, Power 4, Power 5 conferences last year. This year, it's everywhere. This year, it is from top to bottom an absolutely bonkers season right now. People are looking at college football playoff rankings and panicking because their team is, not as high as they want it to be. Maybe they're too high, maybe whatever it is. There's a lot of this season still left. Even though there's 3 weeks left in the regular season, there's still a lot that can play out in these next few weeks. So we're here to talk about this, and let's just get right into it. First game, we're going to talk about Texas at Arkansas. They're going to Fayetteville. We talked about this at the end of the show earlier this week. How good is Texas? I think that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. How good are they really? They beat a Michigan team that's, maybe not as good as traditional national championship defending teams. And against Georgia, a team that is struggling, and a game where Carson Beck struggled, they got mopped. They got absolutely mopped by double digits. And they've been able to win the games that they're supposed to win so far this season. But Arkansas is a little bit on the frisky side. It includes an upset against Tennessee. They had a chance to beat a Texas A&M team that's looking pretty good right now. This Arkansas team is not to be messed with, and you're going to Fayetteville. And I think people remember the last time that Texas traveled to Fayetteville, and they got spanked. So I am very intrigued with this game. This line is at, 14.5? Is that what it's at?
I'm seeing
14, 13.5. We'll pick it at 13.5. That's a big line. That's a big line. I'll get it out of the way. I'll probably take Texas to win this game, but man, I don't think they're covering 13.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting here. I think, and it's wild that we're in middle November, and do we really know how good Texas is? We've talked about this, I feel like, recently on a lot of our episodes now, and it's like, where does Texas fall? Yes, they're at number 3 right now. Yes, they are, kind of controlling their own destiny in the SEC and obviously the playoffs after that. So it is definitely a matter of, can they just put good football together? We've seen, their most recent outing after the bye against Florida playing really complete football there. Obviously, it was against a third-string quarterback. It was against a team that was also pretty banged up, but nonetheless very impressive at home to make a statement like that out of the bye. To me, you look up and down their schedule, and I cannot believe I was going to be saying this in, middle of November. This is the best quarterback that they're playing, I think, that they have played thus far in Taylor Green. I think Arkansas is battle tested. They have played a lot of very tough teams in the SEC, right? They've played in tough environments. They've done a lot of it. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see how, the strength versus strength here of, honestly, Texas's defense versus this Arkansas offense goes against each other, and what kind of performance do we get from Quinn Ewers? Which Quinn Ewers do we get? Does the offensive line protect him? Because I think this defensive line is a little bit underrated in terms of how they can get after the quarterback and really disrupt things from that kind of standpoint. So I'm gonna be exact with you. I think it'll be a little bit closer than we think. I think being at home for Arkansas matters, and I think this is a game they've also circled on their schedule and one that they really think they can make a statement in and kind of take down another top team like they did to Tennessee earlier in the season at home.
Yeah, and then, what does Sam Pittman's job security look like if he has, what would it be, 2 top 5 wins? 2 top 10 wins in one season? One of them on the road, one of them at home?
And listen, if you're beating Texas this week, you're staring down 8 wins because you still got Louisiana Tech and then a team in Missouri that we think is, potentially very gettable, very, very gettable for Arkansas. Yeah, my goodness.
Understatement.
So it's obviously not to look ahead here, but this would be massive. I don't think he needs this to keep his job. I think the Tennessee job did a fantastic thing. However, I don't know if you can get blown out in this game. I think that's part of it because that would be a third team that you're getting kind of blown out by at home in the SEC. And I know it's LSU and I know it's Ole Miss who's playing very good football right now. And I know it's Texas. So I get that aspect, but I still think you need to keep this competitive. And man, oh man, Texas, first of all, has not played a ton of close games, right? Any close games? Maybe Vanderbilt, if you count that. But
it was like a touchdown, like late in the game to make it, 3, and exactly. But then it was over. It was like, it was a 10-point game with a minute and a half to go. So
again, so how battle tested is this Texas football team? I think that's why I wanted to preview this game is, yes, maybe Arkansas is 13.5-point dogs. Yes, they're not in this crazy spot to make the playoffs. However, I think this is really interesting. I think we will learn a lot about Texas more so than we have in the past couple weeks.
I agree, and I'll be ready to kind of the fact that they're number 3 in the college football playoff rankings is kind of ridiculous to me. It is ridiculous, and I think people want to talk about SEC bias is a buzzword thrown around a lot. I don't think this is SEC bias. I think
it's burnt orange.
I think it's a burnt orange because if you look at and
you can go with
some
Penn
SEC
State
bias
too. With that, Penn State's in that spot.
Like the fact that Missouri's ranked, might have to do a little bit with the SEC. I don't know. It's hard to say. I have different opinions on college football playoff rankings, but honestly, who cares right now because it's not going to matter for a couple weeks now. So let's go. Speaking of kind of college football playoff implications, if you want to make the argument that Tulane has a chance to make the college football playoffs, they got to walk into Navy and win a football game. I think they got to win it pretty convincingly. Navy is on an absolute schneid right now. We talked about it. It was like when they played Notre Dame, it was like, oh, this is one of those games. Did Notre Dame break Navy? Well, we'll see how they respond. And then they got smacked the next week. Navy on a bit of a schneid. Tulane playing really good football. Mekhi Hughes is just running over everyone. And I don't believe Navy's run defense is incredibly strong. I think Tulane, as much as Navy wants to, control the football, I think Tulane is just as good at controlling the football with their running game, with their defense, the way John Sumrall has those boys coached up. I like Tulane in this spot, and I know that the number that you're looking at is you're like, okay, they got to cover a touchdown, -7 on the road. I think they do that. I like Tulane in this spot. I'll take Tulane -7, and I'm not going to really sweat about that. Won't be on my best bets, because it is on the road. Both teams going to run the ball. Maybe possessions are shortened. But I do think that Tulane wins this game.
Yeah, that's not crazy at all. I'm with you here. I'm going to take them to cover. I think they do it comfortably. I know you said, it's weird because the Navy, Army, it's games like that there is fewer possessions potentially where you have, these, big 10, 12, 14 play drives that just eat up so much of the clock, and exactly what Navy wants to do in this spot here at home against a team that's, first of all, very talented and very, very good, and on a mission too, because like you said, they are tasting, I think, a potential playoff spot. If things were to go wrong in the Mountain West there for Boise State, this is a spot Tulane, like you said, style points do matter in the G5 race, I think, when you're comparing these conferences. So this is big time. And Navy, yes, they have been skinny. I get that. But they were also 7-0 at one point. They were also AP ranked at one point. So I think no matter what happens here, I still think, what happens Navy the rest of the way, I still think this will be looked on as a favorable win for Tulane and a chance to build their resume. That's why it's so important for them to get this win, to get this cover. I think, look at Navy and what they've done defensively too. They have been, susceptible on the ground here. And if you look at their yards per game, in the American, they're kind of middle of the pack there. And that's also pretty telling because their games are more short. They are shorter than you do see with some of the other teams in the conference, especially in the American Conference, where I know you have a lot of high-flying offenses and high-scoring games. Yeah, like you said, they got some really, real talent there. Mekhi Hughes is a guy we've been high on for a while now. I took him in our fantasy draft, and he has been awesome. 5.7 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns. You get him established early, and you get Navy in a spot where they have to play from behind, and all of a sudden Horvath and them, they're pressing it, and they got to figure things out, potentially through the air or quick hitters, and that's not really where they want to be. They want to be in control of this football game at home, kind of milking that clock as they like to do, and yeah, give me Tulane here.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I mean, 1,200 yards on the ground for Mekhi Hughes in 10 games. That's really good. If you didn't have guys like Caleb Johnson and, Ashton Genty, you'd be looking at Mekhi Hughes and you'd be like, wow, that is probably one of, if not the best running back in college football. But unfortunately for him, there's guys named Ashton Genty, Caleb Johnson, in this sport. So sorry for him, Although I would have thought that, he'd have more than 13 touchdowns because, he's kind of been putting the ball in the end zone at a ridiculous rate the last couple of weeks. But I think their offense has recently just really figured it out. And once you get to the American, too, where you're seeing a lot less stingy defenses, I think Mekhi Hughes just is showing why he's a really good football player. So, yeah, I'm with you. Let's go. Tulane -7. We're going to get over now to the Sun Belt in a game that you might not think matters, but it really does. It does depend on the situations with Georgia Southern. Is Georgia Southern going to keep winning? Is Marshall going to keep winning? But James Madison and Old Dominion, this is kind of an elimination game for them right now. James Madison travels to Old Dominion. James Madison's favored by 3 points. This is a big one for me because I got tickets on both of them to win the Sun Belt. And unfortunately, the Sun Belt standings don't have either of those teams at the top, but Marshall and Georgia Southern are both ahead of these teams right now with only one loss in conference, where Old Dominion and James Madison both have 2 losses. But there's some weird tiebreaker stuff that can go on right here if all of these teams end up finishing with 2 losses, where one of these teams could end up sneaking in, and having that common opponent, that head-to-head, is a big deal in this spot. When I look at Old Dominion, okay, that game against Appalachian State, dude, where they turned the ball over 5 times in Appalachian State's territory, was ridiculous. Okay, I think Old Dominion is way better than that. They gave that football away a billion times. I know we talk about Colton Joseph, really improving that offense, and he has. It was just putting the ball on the ground, man, in tough spots. And I think James Madison has struggled on the road, which I think is a big deal, especially in the Sun Belt. They're 0-2 on the road in the Sun Belt against teams that are quite frankly inferior to them. So, and they've also been an insanely opportunistic team on this defensive side of the football. This James Madison team, 2nd in the country in interceptions, 10th in the country in fumbles recovered. So that's, the turnover margin with James Madison is quite frankly, ridiculous. So I'm looking at this, and I like James Madison as a football team, but I just something about Old Dominion at home that I can't get over. If you're gonna give me that 3, I love the 3. In fact, I'll take Old Dominion to win straight up.
Wow. I mean, the last time I faded Old Dominion, the last time we covered them was against in that Georgia Southern game, and man, oh man, was I wrong. They came out and they came out flying. That was another game at home. This is a big spot for them. Like you said, both these teams still very live in the Sun Belt, potentially not only with the games that are still left on their schedule, but also, with the tiebreakers that they kind of do have. Like you said, they're at the top of the Sun Belt East. It's going to be very interesting to go through November and see what happens there. I know Marshall's got to play Old Dominion and James Madison still, so that they can either get a big boost or, we'll see what happens there. But I think I'm just gonna take the home team here. I'm gonna be with you here. I'll just ride Old Dominion to win, and if you're giving me 3 points, sure, I'll take it. The only thing that does scare me is if Barnett can get them through the air. Georgia Tech, or I'm sorry, Old Dominion, has given up 243 yards through the air. That is, at the bottom 25% of the Sun Belt, and there are some pretty bad defenses in the Sun Belt because the only other teams below them is Georgia Southern, who's terrible defensively, Arkansas State, who's terrible defensively, and then South Alabama, who has been shredded through the air. So that's definitely a spot that does scare me. However, we saw what they can do if you kind of get after a quarterback and make them uncomfortable and put them in bad spots. They can really flip the game quickly on some turnovers. Yeah, give me Old Dominion here. Plus, we're picking it at 3.
3.
Yeah, man, I'll take it at 3.
Also, too, like, when every point matters on the road, and you're a team like James Madison, while they're explosive, they've struggled in the red zone some. They really have, scoring points. They're aggressive. Bob Chesney there wants touchdowns. They're not great in the red zone. Old Dominion, that's kind of been their bread and butter. That that a lot of yards given up, but it's that bend but don't break kind of thing. And while you can't rely on that consistently all the time, I just like it at home, dude. In fact, I like it a lot. Little hint later in the show, which CD probably is not going to be with me on that one, but I like it a lot. I think Old Dominion's a good football team. I think they are. I think the Appalachian State game was the exception, not the standard.
Yeah, and at this point, too, like we talked about with Texas, where in terms of being battle tested, Old Dominion has played in a ton of close games all year, and I think you're starting to get more comfortable. Like the App State loss last week was brutal. It was, absolutely, and it's going to go either way. When you do have these close games with teams of quote unquote similar talent. But JMU, outside of ULM, which they struggled right in that fourth quarter in the second half to move the football to convert on 3rd and 4th down, which could again be a big play here. They have not been an elite team, or they have not played in a lot of close games. It's either kind of blowing them out or getting blown out, and we saw what Georgia Southern did to them. So it'll be interesting here. I think when they do play good teams or teams that kind of match up well against them, they can get got.
Let's go over to Boise State, traveling to San Jose State, where 2 technically first-year coaches, right? Spencer Danielson, in his first full season coaching at Boise State, squares off against the Ken Niumatalolo coach San Jose State team, who's his first year coaching. Because in the Mountain West, what do we have? 10 coaching changes this offseason? Or something stupid like that? I mean, this is a brand new conference, and this is, once again, one of those matchups where you got brand new coaches. And San Jose State, dare I say, sneaky.
Yeah, they're a very, very interesting team. I think, not that they were written off, but they kind of were when Brent Brennan headed over to Arizona, and it was all of a sudden you're seeing some of their players into the portal, and they got some of those guys back, including a guy named Nick Nash. And I encourage you, if you are not a Mountain West fan and you are not familiar with his game, he is an incredible talent. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty will get all the praise, will get all the hype, deservingly so. He's a very good football player, a very, very good football player. But Nick Nash and what they've done to offensively through the air It's been really, really impressive for the Spartans this year. They are very, very dangerous. And if you look at what they've done in a lot of these games here, 6.5 yards per play, 6.5 yards per play. Last couple games, it's been over 7. It is a very, very, dangerous, explosive offense. And if you get Boise State in a spot where they don't, have that Ashton Jeanty running the ball, or they don't really, they can't just kind of milk the clock away and really take over the game through the ground and get Jeanty to his 30 touches, that could be a spot where you do get got in a game where you do have more talent than the team you're playing against. This is potentially the last game Boise State does get got in the regular season. I think you look at their schedule, and I don't think Wyoming nor Oregon State scares you in ways that San Jose State does, especially on the road here. Now, I was very impressed with how they responded from that UNLV game against San Diego State. I thought Mad Max played a very good football game against San Diego State, and I just wasn't impressed with him last week in Nevada at home. And Jeanty again bailed you out. And so if you don't play your A game here, Maddox Madison, and you have to rely on Jeanty, and let's say they sell it to stop the run, let's say you get some third down stops, it could be a very, very interesting football game. With that being said, I'll take Boise State to win, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to middle it here. I'll take it. 13.5 we're going to pick it at?
Yeah.
That's what I got then.
Yeah, it's not crazy. I mean, the Colorado State game that they played, scared me a little bit. Granted, that was at pretty high elevation, because what Colorado Springs is at, like 6,000 feet. Like Laramie's at like 7,200. There's definitely some elevation in Colorado Springs that can affect your passing game, and I believe Eager might have gotten hurt that game or something. So, it's tough when you have 2 losses in the Mountain West. When you're San Jose State, when you have 2 undefeated teams and then a 1-loss team. So I think they can do some damage here the rest of the way out. I think they did get screwed last year, by the way, by those computer-generated rankings or whatever, that stupid tiebreaker that they have in the Mountain West. I think they got screwed by that. I think they were playing some of the best football, of any G5 team in the country last year, come around the end of the season. But yeah, the roster turnover has been impressive. Some of the star player retention has been impressive. No more Kieran Robinson, but you got other guys there that are really solid at that running back spot. You talk about
and Quail Conley too. Quail Conley left over to Arizona.
Yeah. So this has been impressive. I don't know if I'm gonna ride. I might go with this. I might go this route with you. It is on the road. Boise State's got to go on the road against what we both think is a pretty decent team. Defensively, San Jose State hasn't been garbage. They've been gettable through the air, of course, this season, but Boise State's passing game has looked a lot more effective. I think Boise State will effectively find ways to use that play action because, of course, why wouldn't they use play action? Because it's been so lights out for them all season. Their receiving core has been awesome. Cam Camper's been really good. Austin Bolt has been really good. Maddox Madsen looks, like one of the better, more efficient quarterbacks in college football right now. But I think I'll be with you right there on that. I still don't trust Boise State's defense entirely. I think I'll take San Jose State plus 13.5, but I think you have to take Boise State to win because there's just too much on the line for them this game, and they're too talented to, I think, lose a football game like this. But you never know in college football. I mean, we talk about 10-point underdogs. If you had put this on your dirty dogs, which we haven't gotten there yet, but I wouldn't have been surprised.
No, not at all. I do think, winning when it matters on 3rd and 4th down for San Jose State is going to be huge here. Boise State is ripping a 51.3% 3rd down conversion percentage. That is good for the best in the Mountain West by a pretty significant margin. But in the red zone here, you have a San Jose State team who's 28th in the country in red zone percentage in terms of, stopping scores, whether it be, field goals or touchdowns here, which could be the difference in these games or make it close or so you're not trailing too many points. And so maybe it's a close game because I mean, you're putting up, 330 yards through the air? I mean, holy cow. And in terms of Boise State, I know they've been, good defensively this year. I think a lot of it has to do with, maybe their schedule, maybe, these certain games or teams are kind of pressing against them. But through the air, they've been susceptible. And I know potentially that could be due to game script. I get that. But 247 yards per game, that's good for bottom 25%, just about in the Mountain West. So who knows here? It could be really, really interesting. I want to ask you this here about Boise State. Do style points matter in this game? Because we did talk about Tulane. You do have Louisiana. You do have these other teams in these conferences, that are still fighting you. Army, for instance, too, is still undefeated with Notre Dame still on their schedule. And Navy, I guess, too, which is crazy. I don't know how that's going to even work if we get in that spot. But, do you have to kind of win pretty? Because I think the committee dropped them a point or dropped them a ranking, because of some things happened behind them. I get that with Ole Miss, but they struggled with Nevada last week in terms of looking pretty and dominating your competition. Do they have to dominate in this game?
Well, let's be real. No one who's on the college football playoff committee watched that game, so it doesn't really matter. Although they will box score snipe it,
yeah,
likely. It depends, right? If you have a situation where legitimately, if the Big 12 gets messy enough or the SEC gets messy enough, not that I think that an SEC champion team would be ranked, ahead of, or not that I think Boise State would be ranked ahead of the SEC champion. I don't know. I would think that the SEC championship champion would be. There's still a lot of crazy stuff that can play out, but I think Army kind of controls their own destiny because their resume just would look so much better than Boise State. Like, they would have the signature win over Notre Dame. But I still think that if Boise State wins out, there's still that at-large possibility, right? Because if Army wins out, right, and they beat Notre Dame, I think that swings the door wide open for you to grab another spot in that at-large situation. Plus, some of these SEC teams, these two-loss SEC teams, play each other. You've got some interesting stuff going on there. So I think if Boise State wins out, I think they'll still likely be in it. I don't think you need style points necessarily. I think you have some good wins. You have, the star power. You kind of got the media on your side right now. And then also, I think people just look at that Oregon result, and I think people are pretty enamored with the possibility that Boise State did play, Oregon down to the wire, which is the only other team to do that is Ohio State this season. So,
yeah, I will say, and the reason why I asked that is, yes, it might get interesting with what happens in the other conferences, but I do wonder if Boise State can climb ahead of 12, because I do think that maybe being, number 11 or even 10 is significantly better than being number 12, because number
100%.
12, you're probably playing Ohio State, or you're playing the SEC or
Oregon,
whatever it may be, or Oregon, yes, for that matter too. So because you'll probably play the Big Ten runner up. So it's I don't think you want to be in a spot where you're playing. I think you look at teams at 10 and 11, and you're seeing a little bit more winnable football games there. Power rankings metric. I get that. Indiana and BYU have been playing great football, and they've been winning a lot of football games. But I do think that point still stands to where if you're Spencer Anderson and Boise State, I do think style points matter. I think blowing out teams would help you, and if you have teams who are going to muddy each other up, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, these teams, I think Miami, Notre Dame, these teams all have chances to lose some football games, BYU as well, Indiana. So who knows what could happen there. If you start dominating your competition, I think there's an opportunity for you to slide ahead of them and, potentially be at a higher seed than 12, because there's no mandate against, a big G5 team being above 12. It is the 5 highest ranked champions. And, the lowest they can be is 12 if they're the fifth highest G5 ranking, but they can still climb on their own.
Arizona State travels to Manhattan, I believe, and boy, this line is at 9. I love Arizona State in this spot. I love Arizona State. Brian Ward's been able to do with that Arizona State team, defensively, being able to stop the run. I think it's been incredible. Like, there's a reason that Arizona State is 7-2. I know if you look back at their schedule and you're like, oh, maybe I'm not impressed with that win as much as I was when it happened. Maybe I wasn't impressed with the Utah win as much. Maybe I'm not impressed with the Texas State win as much. Maybe I'm not impressed with this one. Pick whatever games you don't want to be impressed with. I think Arizona State is still playing good football. And if you're going to look at me in the eye and tell me that Kansas State is playing dominating football right now, I think you're jamoking yourself right now after they're coming off a loss to a Houston team that is, granted, playing better football and I think is well coached and has a good defense, but I think Arizona State is a much better team than Houston, and I get going on the road is always tough, but man, I love Arizona State in this spot. In fact, I like them so much. Give me the +9 and give me them to win that game friggin' straight up, dude.
Wow, I like that too. And listen, this is a team too that their last loss, outside of the Jeff Sims game, which I think we all understand exactly what that's come from, is at Texas Tech by 8 back in September, right? And that's when Levitt was still getting going. Scadaba only had 18 touches, and I think it actually.
And Scadaboo's definitely playing. Well, he's probable for Saturday. So, people were worried about his injury status heading into this game. He's going to play, guys. He's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, hats off to Kenny Dillingham, what he's done. I do think Kansas State, they kind of got written off. I think there's this bad stigma against them, left over from that BYU game. And I know it was ugly, and I get that. It got out of hand, I think, because they actually tried to come back and win that football game. And they just don't have the horses to do that, right? That's not how they're built. So this is an important spot at home where you do have to get up early because just like your team, Arizona State loves to be able to run the football, milk that clock away, and really get after, kind of get after that clock, really kind of milk your way through it and kind of control the offense there. I'm just gonna middle list here. I know you're going straight up there. I think that's ballsy. I think it's awesome, and I do think it would be fantastic. Both these teams love to run the football. Both these teams, are pretty good. Yards per play. Kansas State's damn good. They're up at 6.3 yards per play. That's top 25 in the country. Arizona State's a little bit, halfway through there at 5.7. So it'll be interesting to see the down disparities in this football game. But Arizona State has to stop the run. You saw what Houston did, against Kansas State, and they kind of were able to come back and win that football game. And they got after them on the ground too. Zion Chris was fantastic, and Scadaboo, what he can do offensively is so dangerous. You got to win the turnover battle. That's where I'm kind of like, a lot of things have to happen for you, I think, for you to win this football game in Manhattan. Kansas State, by the way, they're still very, very alive, I think, for a college football playoff spot, especially if Colorado were to go down to one of these teams that they do play this week or the next couple weeks. They're right for the spot there. Kansas State also finishes with Iowa State, so they will be able to bump that spot even further in terms of their tiebreakers in the Big 12. So it's very interesting here, but I'll go Kansas State in a close one.
Well, let me ask you this. If you think Kansas State is still alive for a college football playoff spot, why is Arizona State not alive for a college football playoff spot? I know they don't have the head-to-head.
They don't control their own destiny, really. And I guess neither does Colorado, but it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I do think if BYU were to have lost, which they probably should have, and by the way, they're only 2.5-point favorites in Kansas, which is great, or in Provo against Kansas, which is wild there. And Arizona State has a chance here to climb the rankings here with Kansas State and BYU on their schedule the next 2 weeks and put a statement on the Big 12. That would be an incredible sight. Holy cow.
If BYU loses to Kansas, then Arizona State, assuming Arizona State beats Kansas State, then Arizona State controls their own destiny.
Yeah.
I believe so, because then they would have...
we'll see what Iowa State does.
I think they would have the common opponents over Iowa State. I think.
Because who did Cincinnati? No, Cincinnati and Tech. No, but Tech beat Iowa State. Well, I guess it would get really muddy really quickly. Wow.
It would be Iowa State Cincinnati. It actually turns out to be a huge game. But then Kansas State Iowa State also play. I think Kansas State's going to win that game, but that's just me. And I think Cincinnati has a really good chance of beating Iowa State, by the way.
Definitely.
This weekend. Because Cincinnati's going to run the ball all over them. So I'm just saying, there's a really good chance that Arizona State can still make the college football playoffs as well. Their schedule looks a little bit tougher on there because they got to beat Iowa State and they got to beat Kansas State, but there is a path. So I'm just saying that I think that locker room, everyone else, the media, everyone else has kind of written them off. But I think in that locker room there, I think Kenny Dillingham and Brian Ward and those guys, I think they got something there. I really do. Think about what they lost in the front seven in this offseason, and to come in and you're holding opponents to almost 3.5 yards per carry. Think about the teams that you've played against that love running the football. That's unbelievable work.
Ollie Gordon was 2.3 yards per play. Now, I know he hasn't been himself this year, but that's still really impressive on the road. 2.3 yards per carry.
I love it. I love Arizona State in this spot. Let's move on then. Let's go to South Alabama at Louisiana. College football playoff implications, dare I say, because it has Sun Belt implications because Louisiana right now is undefeated in the Sun Belt. Their only loss coming on the season to a Tulane team that they had a chance to beat. They had a legitimate chance to beat. South Alabama is a little bit frisky through the air, and you just don't know with this team. Like, what team is going to show up, right? Major Applewhite has done a good job in some games scheming, receivers wide open, whether it's Jamal Pritchett, getting Gio Lopez, getting their absolute monster of a running back, Bothwell, in open space and at the second level. I think I just don't know what I'm going to get from the South Alabama team,
Yeah, it's been up and down in games that they just blown, right? And it's been frustrating if you're a Jaguar fan. I know year one, it's going to be up and down with Major Applewhite. I know you lose, your head coach over to Alabama there, but that Georgia Southern loss, pretty tough, right? 20 points in that fourth quarter. That's unacceptable.
Ridiculous.
I mean, not being able to close out that football game at home with a spot, which, by the way, at that point, you were 3-1 in the conference, making this football game mean a whole heck of a lot more. I still think this is a very winnable spot for them. However, I think Louisiana's a wagon. I think Louisiana's really, really good. You look at their metrics here, 6.9 yards per play. That is good for 5th in the country. They have been really, really good as of late, too. Yeah, give me Louisiana. Give me -7 pretty handedly here, especially what they can do running the football, especially what they can do through the air. Man, they're just so good offensively, and I think defensively you can do enough. I mean, they've been really good defensively. They're top 2 in total yards here, especially what they've done on the ground being very good as well. So it'll be interesting here, but. Yeah, give me Louisiana at home too. 7 points. Yeah, let's go Raging Cajuns.
Yeah, personally, I do think they've been playing really well at home, and I do think that they've been a beneficiary of some favorable scheduling. The fact that you got App State ended up not being as good of a team as you thought going into the season. Coastal Carolina ended up not being as good of a team going into the season. The impressive one was going to San Marcos and handling your business there, but you also still one possession game, in that one as well.
And you had pretty banged up Texas State team, right?
Yeah. So in that Tulane game, you had them at home when they were still figuring their stuff out. The Wake Forest game, honestly, Wake Forest had a chance to win that football game.
Wake Forest has struggled closing out football games. We've seen that recently. Yeah. We've seen that since September.
Holy cow. Yeah, especially if you had them plus 7.5 for some reason last week. What a stupid way to end that football game. But, I like Louisiana to win this football game, but kind of like South Alabama plus 7.5. You're coming off of a bye right here. I think that Georgia Southern game, if you play like that, like 3/4 of football like that, right? And you could just find a way to play a fourth quarter of football like that. One, I think you can win the game straight up, right? I really do. Two, even if you play 3 good quarters of football like that, right, against like you did against Georgia Southern, you can cover 7.5, right? You can keep this within a touchdown. I know Louisiana is looking at these last couple games. They're like, oh, South Alabama, Louisiana Monroe, and then whatever other terrible team that they play against. They're like, wow, we got a chance to freaking win this thing out, you know? But I think this might be their toughest game remaining, depending on how Louisiana Monroe really looks heading into that game. I kind of like South Alabama to cover the 7.5 right here. I don't like it because you're on the road. Definitely not a best bet at all. And you never know what you're going to get from South Alabama. You really don't. But I think offensively they're pretty frisky. I mean, and how much do you like this Louisiana defense? Truthfully.
Truthfully, they have been impressive in spots here. I thought last week one was really, really good.
Yes.
I think when they are getting turnovers, I think they're very good in the red zone, right? They are the worst team in the country, the only team to go have their opponents be 100% in the red zone. Right, these are teams that are scoring every time they're getting their zone. Not touchdowns, but just field goals or touchdowns. And sometimes, those are the difference in these games.
They struggle getting off the field.
Yeah.
They struggle getting off the field sometimes.
Now, to me, and I think you can kind of put that back on South Alabama too, where, I mean, in some of these games, right, they have played back to North Texas, even Parker Navarro in Ohio, Jalen Rayner in Arkansas State, have really got them through the air. And again, Georgia Southern coming back last week as well in the fourth quarter. Yeah, I just think Louisiana's a wagon right now. I think they're on a mission. I think South Alabama, I don't trust them really in this spot here. The thing is, Lopez has been good taking care of the football, which is, again, if you're Louisiana. Yeah, exactly. It is exactly, and he's so frisky, man. And if they're running the football well, they take care of the foot. They run the ball well, and they can win the turnover game where they're not giving short fields for Louisiana, and Louisiana has to make stops on third down, especially third and short. That could be in a spot where you get in trouble, absolutely. But you still got to stop Louisiana.
Tennessee goes to Georgia. Man. Is Carson Beck playing terrible football right now or what? Another reports earlier in the week, Chris Falca said some things on a podcast and people ran with it that Nico wasn't playing. All right. He's probably playing, guys. All right. This is a huge line for a team that is just throwing the football away. Now, Tennessee has not been dynamic through the air, right? Like you would probably want them to be, but if Dylan Sampson gets 30-plus touches in a game, my confidence in Tennessee to make a game close and potentially win one of this caliber, my confidence in that goes through the roof. I mean, is that crazy?
Yeah, they've been a team that, again, I've been super unimpressed with. I thought the Mississippi State win was the best they've looked all season. I think they got out to a good start. Even when Nico went down, they relied on, oh, wait, we've got an all-SEC running back in Dylan Sampson. And they really let him loose. They leaned on him. Yeah, you said it, man. This line is humongous for a team, first of all, of Tennessee's caliber, right, and the talent they have on both sides of the football. And secondly, for the way Georgia's been playing. I mean, you saw them just get embarrassed, really embarrassed against Ole Miss last week. And Ole Miss didn't even look fantastic, especially offensively. Georgia's defense is very, very good, and they've been keeping them in these games. And I think, again, if you're Carson Beck, you got to take care of the football. If you're Georgia, you got to find some kind of running game and let Etienne and Frazier go so you're not in these third down situations where you're in tough spots if you are Georgia. Tennessee, by the way, very good against the run. Very good against. So you're probably going to have to find it through the air, and they are not getting separation at all. And we talked about it at the beginning of the season, and a concern of Georgia, if you had to nitpick them, right, would be that wide receiver room in terms of elite talent when they are playing against teams that can match up with them or make them convert on third down, where you have to have these big spots here. And Lovett's been good on third down. I know McElroy was talking about it all game at third and medium. They're going to love it. And he was right, first of all, which, by the way, if McElroy was a very smart guy, I like his stuff, but if he could call it out, right, and he's just doing game prep week, like, you tell me that, and Pete Golding's not the smartest guy ever, but Pete Golding probably figured it out, and they did a damn good job as well. Tennessee, I think, will do the same, and so you got to have some kind of change-up. You got to have some kind of curveball, an off-speed pitch for Georgia, and they haven't, and they have not responded all season. Again, this is another one. I hate to middle it again, but I don't feel good in Kentucky to go in there, especially if Nico, yes, he's probably playing, if he's not 100%, right? And he has to play in this game. And this is why he went out and got Nico in the first place, was to win in a spot like this on the road in Sanford here. It's going to be very, very tough, I think, to get a flat-out win. But if you're telling me Georgia is going to pull away from Tennessee and Georgia's going to completely dominate this football game to win by over 10 points, I have a tough time seeing that. Give me Tennessee here, plus 10. I'll take Georgia to win straight up, though. But, man, I don't like it. Either.
I'll give you 10.5. I'll say we'll pick it at 10.5. Is that fair?
Yeah. And I that helps me even more. Thank you.
It's also going to help me, too, because I'm with you on the Tennessee one. The one thing that I struggle with is, like, it's hard for me to, like, confidently say that, yeah, Georgia's going to win this game. I'm going to say it, like, that'll be my pick, is Georgia to win this football game, because I don't think that Tennessee's explosive enough on offense the way that you need to be in order to beat a Georgia team. But you're right, absolutely. And everything that you just said, Tennessee has a chance to win this football game, but if not, keep it close, right? I think that 10.5 is, a little too much because of injury concerns. And I don't know if this line is because of the injury concerns of Nico. Like, I'm pretty sure Nico's fine. Like, I'm pretty sure he's fine, and he will be playing. So if that line ends up dropping because, it's found out that he is officially playing, I'll be pissed that I didn't hop on him when it was at 10.5. But for the sake of picking on our show, I'll take Tennessee plus 10.5 for sure.
Yeah.
Kansas going to BYU. CD, what's the line? What's the spread on that game right now?
BYU at home against Kansas, who, and if I'm not mistaken, are they 3-8?
They're like 3-6 or something like that.
3-6. They are 2.5 point favorites against the Jayhawks.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to, like, some of these games that Kansas has played in, and, like, they've been in ball games, dude. They've never not been in a ball game. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. You go back, even their out-of-conference games, you go back to the early conference games where they were struggling, even when they were a little bit banged up. UNLV, they gave a tough time. I think we look at this Kansas team, and I think we wrote them off because we saw them go on that little skid there, and we saw them losing to teams who we thought maybe preseason, maybe not these good football teams, but all of a sudden Arizona State looks like a quality loss on the road there. UNLV is a very good football team. West Virginia, by the way, they're 4-2 in the Big 12 as well. Very alive, underratedly. I guess not very alive, but they're still battling there. And you look at them, and they're all one possession games outside of the TCU game, which got out of hand. But you saw them turn around and kind of give Iowa State the business. Right, and their defense is not the best, right, if you're Kansas, but they got a very good coaching staff. They've figured out running the football. Jalen Daniels is taking care of the football. This is a really tough spot for BYU after the Holy War. After everything that happened there with the refs and whatever else happened at the end of the game. I know BYU's done it time and time again, in winning these close football games. But, man, this feels like a spot right now. It feels like a spot.
Yeah, There's one team in the country that is 0-5 in one possession games. There's actually only one team in college football that has 5 losses, 5 one possession losses, and that is the Kansas Jayhawks. I like Kansas in this spot. I don't think BYU is going to be able to stop the run all that well. I know that they did when they needed to against Utah, but I think this is a different beast that they're playing against. Jalen Daniels is running the football. All right, he's out and he's moving. Okay, when he's moving, he's dangerous. I think this Kansas team goes into Provo, and I think they beat and take down the undefeated BYU Cougars. I really do. I'll take the 2.5. Sure, I'll eat those points, gobble them up, but I'll also take them to win straight up. So yeah, give me the Kansas Jayhawks here. I like them a lot in this spot.
I'm going to agree with you here. And listen, it's first of all, it doesn't really change much for BYU. It probably gives them less margin for error, down the stretch. And we talked about some games where they can get gotten here. But also, if they went out and they still have a 2-shot lead or 2-game lead over everybody else outside of Colorado in the Big 12, so they're kind of doing fine here. Kansas, by the way, they are 51% on third down conversions. 51%. When's the last time you've seen a team that was 3-6? I think that, yeah, like you said, I think if you look, kind of behind the record, behind the one-score losses, this team in Kansas is much, much more dangerous than they're getting credit for. And I think you saw Iowa State running that trap there. I bet against Kansas a couple weeks ago. I took Kansas State in that game, and Kansas gave them just a brutal just a tough time. And this landslide pulled guy, we kind of wrote him off. We wrote him off, and shame on us for doing that because this team is much better than what they're getting credit for right now. And for BYU here, it's just, I wonder if part of it is we're just waiting for them to lose because I think we see that 6 next name, we see that 9-0, and we're just like, okay, something doesn't add up here. And they've done an incredible job. Sataki, that secondary, that staff defensively has been incredible. And you've seen the resilience time and time again for the Cougars. And this is at home too, which, by the way, Provo is a pretty tough place to play, in my opinion, especially in the Big 12 there. And Kansas on the road, right, still yet to get a win on the road. So we're kind of projecting here, they're a team that can play spoiler maker because they do have BYU, they do have Colorado left on their schedule. And Kansas, by the way, still fighting to make a bowl game. And if that matters at a program like Kansas, I think making bowl games is huge, especially for the job security. Not that he's in any kind of job security pressure at all, but they're still alive and well. And I think we saw they have a lot of fight left in this football team. Since that Arizona State loss, you handle Houston, you bring your rival to a very tough game on the road there, 2-point loss, and then you kind of stomp Iowa State here. Like you said, BYU is very good at one-possession games, and Kansas is not. So it'd be interesting to see what gives there. But yeah, I'll go Kansas here. And if you give me a couple points, I'll take them as well.
Trying to find Kansas's APR rating. I think there's a chance that they can make it with 5. Nope, just kidding. They're going to have to win 6 football games, which is still possible. Like you talked about, finding to get to a bowl game is a big deal. But yeah, they're going to need this one to do that. They can't make a bowl game only winning 5 football games. That's just not going to happen. Well, not when you're sitting 73rd in APR. So that's tough. Which, by the way, if people didn't know what that was, it's your academic progress rating. It's like you're the tiebreaker. If there's not enough 6-win football teams, or if there's teams that opt out or whatever, there's the tiebreaker goes to like 5-win teams with an academic progress rating of the highest one, which is basically just like
they got a
GPA, your athletic program or something like that.
So it's actually basically graduation rate in that kind of factor in there.
So,
which is exactly how Minnesota, who was 5-7 last year, made it to the bowl game. Though, congrats, Minnesota, and for your coaching staff, instead of getting Christmas off, you're going to Detroit. We love Detroit here, but It's just funny there. But yeah, so it is your academic progress. So yeah, they're going to have to win 6 games, and starts with this one in Provo.
Let's get over to our Dirty Dogs. We're done previewing games. We're here to talk about 10-point underdogs that have a chance of winning straight up. Last week, we hit Georgia Tech plus 380 to take down and give Miami their first loss of the season. So on the year, we are 11-33. That doesn't sound like a great record, but a quarter of the time, you're saying 1 in every 4 teams. You're saying, on average, one of these teams on the list that we put when each of us picks 2 is going to drop, is going to fall. Gosh, that's a pretty good rating right there. If you were to, bet these blindly, you'd be up 10.10 units on the season, which is pretty ridiculous if you ask me. So, and that goes all the way back from, hitting Louisiana Monroe plus 600. It goes back to hitting Vanderbilt plus 440 against Kentucky. It goes back to hitting New Mexico State plus 360 to give them their first FBS win of the season. We've had some dirty dogs. All right. And it's not going to stop this week. I'm going to go first because I hit the smelly one last week. I had Georgia Tech plus 380. My first pick is going to be Arkansas plus 450 against Texas. I like them in this spot. We already talked about it a lot. We previewed that Texas game. Texas, we don't really know how good they are, right? We don't really know. And it goes both ways. When you're looking at dirty dogs, you want to take either a dog where you're like, I don't really know how good they are. They could be pretty good. Or you want to take a dog that is playing against a team that's like, we don't really know how good they are. Like, how good is like when you took New Mexico State, it's like, how good is Louisiana Tech? When I took Georgia Tech, it's like, how good is Miami going to be on the road? Late in the season. How good is I guess when Old Dominion took down. Was that James Madison plus 300 a while ago? Whatever it was.
You had ULM beating James Madison too.
I did, yeah. I actually called 2 of James Madison's losses this year, which is unfortunate because I have a plus 800 ticket for them to win the Sun Belt.
You also took them to beat North Carolina too, so
that is true. Gosh,
it's kind of crazy.
Really crazy. The JMU Dirty Dogs have been feeding nations right now. So actually, sorry, Old Dominion was against Texas State. That's what it was. So, but yeah, I like Arkansas plus 450. Taylor Green, the athleticism there. I know he's been banged up, but if he can get outside the pocket, he's been bad when he's played against really good pass rushers. I don't necessarily believe in Texas's pass rushing the same way I believe in Texas A&M's, Tennessee's, Ole Miss's, LSU's.
Even Arkansas's. How about that?
Yeah, even Arkansas's.
Dare I say.
At home in Fayetteville, it can be plus 450. Yeah, I'll eat that up.
That would be stinky there, and I think that would be pretty serious for Arkansas, and that would honestly, in my opinion, and it should put Texas in danger of missing the playoffs if they lose in College Station. And by the way, if you lose Arkansas, I think you're going to see some flaws in this Texas team that could be very, very vulnerable in a couple weeks there, in rivalry week. And like I said in our video, I like that for you. Taylor Green is probably the best quarterback they've seen, and when he plays well, like you said, maybe not against elite pass rushers, but when he's playing well, it's really, really dangerous. I'm going to stick in the SEC here. Again, another top team here, a couple top teams in the standings. Tennessee plus 325. I know I took Georgia to win, in our technical, previews, whatever, but I think this value is awesome. I think, you're giving a team with a caliber of Tennessee, a team playing as poorly as Georgia is right now offensively. That's a lot of value. And I know we said Tennessee's not explosive. I just think, and I had these burned into my brain, man, against Alabama, against Oklahoma, even Arkansas. Guys that are streaking open down the football field, and Nico just has not been able to consistently hit them. All it takes is one game to hit a couple of those, and you get in a rhythm. The guy, the talent he has, it could be really special. And even if he doesn't, too, defensively, you're very good against the run, and Dylan Sampson is a monster. Get him 30-plus carries, move the chains, give Georgia down in the football game where Carson Beck has to pass, where their pass rush, or him against the pass rush is very bad, and that offensive line is struggling too. So, yeah, give me Tennessee.
Yeah, and by the way, for reference, we draft these before the show. But that was one of the 4 teams that I was thinking about taking. Right, so sometimes the game with this is like, what do I think CD's going to pick? I think that's a great one. I think it's a great one. I was pretty close to like taking Tennessee to win straight up, just like as a pick on our,
with no
like
value.
with no value, like just on our show, like when we're previewing the game, we pick the spreads, we pick the winners. I almost had we both had Tennessee covering. I almost had Tennessee winning that game, but same thing with Arkansas. I just saw slightly more value there, getting it at plus 450. So, but then my other one is going to be a team that's. It's hard to take a dirty dog when a team just finds ways to lose, right? But I'm going to take Wake Forest plus 340. They do get North Carolina. And North Carolina, look, say what you will about them, and I've had my thoughts on Mac Brown and why he should definitely retire and how he's holding that program back. They're playing better football these last couple of weeks, particularly on the offensive side of the football. They could definitely run away with this one against Wake Forest. I'm not saying like this is like the stinkiest value of all time, but I think Wake Forest plus 340 against a team that I think is gettable, has found ways to lose, albeit early in the season. I do think Wake Forest was in that game with California, right? The score of that game does not indicate how close that football game was basically the entire way. I think Wake Forest could definitely keep this close. And if it's a one-possession game, and you're asking me, I know Wake Forest has found ways to lose football games with Hank Bachmeier at the helm, but, the coaching matchup here, it's very much in favor of Dave Clawson over Mac Brown in a tight game, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's actually not crazy at all. I don't hate that for you. I think it's kind of good value. It's very good value there. That was one that I had circled as well, or that I really considered. I'm going to go back to the SEC here, and you talked about it's hard to pick teams that just find ways to lose football games. I'll pick against a team that's found ways to lose football team, and I'll go pretty stinky here. Give me the Louisiana Warhawks of the Sun Belt plus 1,500 against Auburn, excuse me. Against Auburn. Auburn, again, has found ways to lose football team. Their turnover margin is just awful, right? I think, to be nice about it. And they are 125th in the country in turnover margin, and I think that's been very telling. Now, if you tell me Jarquez Hunter gets 25 carries in this football game, 28 carries, and you're somewhat relevant in the turnover margin, it's probably going to be ULM. Or going to be Auburn in this game. Now, maybe they might not cover, but they could win pretty handily. They are, 23.5-point favorites or something like that in this game. So,
yeah.
24. Yeah. So, it is going to be pretty stinky here. However, there is precedent. First of all, we saw, obviously, a much different New Mexico State team go in there. Or no, yeah, it was New Mexico State and get a win with Diego Pavia. However, ULM can run the football, right? You get off the field. You get stops, you get turnovers, whatever it may be. I do think Auburn, I know they're coming off a bye, but Hugh Freeze has spots where he loses football games he should not lose. And also, they have Texas A&M and Alabama still on their schedule afterwards. Not that they're looking ahead to those games, but maybe they are. And maybe in the bye week, Auburn did a little bit more recruiting than maybe, prep for ULM. So it'll be interesting here. It'll be one I'm going to keep my eye on in that 11:45 window Central Time for the SEC, because I think all of a sudden, man, you get Auburn in a close game, and I think they'll start seeing flashbacks there, and I don't think that's a good sign. And I know they've been good at home, but I don't know how rowdy Jordan Hare is going to be for 3-6 Auburn team against UL Monroe. I'm sure it'll be packed, and I respect that stadium a lot. But
hey, you've been there. So it is a good stadium. But, yeah, I think you're a little bit crazy for that. I don't think I'd be laying. But here's the thing, though. Let me ask you this. They lose to Louisiana Monroe. Okay.
Fired. No, he shouldn't be fired. Well,
Really?
Here's the thing. I think Auburn, I think this is like your one step back, two step forwards type season. I think for Auburn, I think they're playing some young kids. I think they could have gone all in this season and put the cards on the table and
for
maybe gotten, and for being a little bit more active in the portal. And you could have gotten maybe 7 to 8 wins. I think there was a reason why, and I think Hugh Freeze has the support There's nobody that's snooping through his phone when he goes to the bathroom there at Auburn. So I think it's a little bit different situation. I think Brian Harsin had it out for him from the start. I think Hugh Freeze and that they know exactly what they're into. I think they're at this point actually very honest with themselves as a program right now in terms of the talent they have assembled. And I credit them for doing it the right way and building through the high school ranks and taking it slow and kind of just speed your way, and because if it doesn't work out, like look at Florida State there, right? Like it could get bad, and it'll be interesting. No, fireable offense maybe, after the way the season's gone. But
I mean, back-to-back season, I think.
I would
for the Auburn's sake. For Auburn's sake, they gotta win this game, right? Because I think Hugh Freeze can be the guy down the road, but you go back-to-back seasons where you do have probably a top 30 roster in college football, and you lose back-to-back years. New Mexico State, you get killed at home, and then you come in Louisiana Monroe, one of the worst athletically funded programs in the FBS.
The worst.
Only in front of maybe Kennesaw State, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, they just fired their coach, so
yeah,
maybe there's some boosters.
That's another stupid conversation. That is ridiculous that they fired him. But that's a whole nother can of worms that we can open in the postseason when we do our coaching carousel coverage, which is some of the best in any college football media, honestly. Generally, I actually had to look at just looking at Texas A&M stuff, and I was looking at all the Tony Sanchez stuff that we'd put together, and I'm like, man, kind of nailed it, in terms of the fit there. But that's another thing, another conversation. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys for tuning in to our. Oh, sorry, I'm a bozo. We got best bets still.
Yeah, we do.
Oh my gosh, I almost got out of there. Almost got out of there and didn't let you guys eat up some of these value plays that we have cooked up here on the season. I am 34-29, up 1.94 units on the season. CD is 29-26, up 0.39 units. Both went 3-2 last week, winning weeks. Sure, should I have gone 5-0? Yeah, absolutely. I got garbage beats left and right. But guess what? We're back, and I don't care because I'm here. I'm still up units. I've still got plays. We've still got 3 weeks of regular season football, bowl games, conference championships, college football playoffs. I'm not worried. I'm not worried one bit. So I've got 5 plays today, CD. How many do you got?
I got 4.
Ooh, all right. Well, I'll get it started. Let me open it up with Old Dominion +3. We already talked about it with James Madison. They get him at home. I just like this spot too much for Old Dominion right now, and they've been playing good football. I think the Appalachian State game is the anomaly, not the trend. So I think that you're getting kind of a decent market value right here, especially at home. And James Madison, 0-2 on the road in the Sun Belt. So I like Old Dominion if you're going to give me a field goal in that game. And James Madison, they beat the piss out of bad teams. All right, they beat the piss out of bad football teams. When they've played decent football teams that show up, they are susceptible to losing ball games. Both these teams are still fighting for a chance to win the Sun Belt. Give me Old Dominion +3. We're back on the wagon. Come on.
Yeah, that's not crazy at all. I'm gonna go Illinois -3. I thought it was at 2.5. I think it was. I think it in some spots, but I don't think it's quite at a spot we're gonna pick it at. I like 2.5 a lot more than 3. However, Illinois at home here, off a bye, right? I know Michigan State's also off a bye, but this is a good Illinois team, I think. This is a pretty good Illinois team. They ran into a good Minnesota team that played very, very well. And a guy like Darius Taylor and Daniel Jackson, who I don't quite see in the skill positions yet for Michigan State. Nick Marsh is awesome. Young kid, very talented. Aiden Child's young kid, talented. However, susceptible he's been susceptible, especially on the road too. And the Iowa win a couple weeks ago is looking worse and worse every single week. Illinois finding Illini -3 at home against Michigan State.
I like it. I like the 2.5. I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go, and I tweeted this out on the Redshirt Sophomore account because it is a crazy line. South Carolina and Missouri are playing against each other this week. It's in Columbia. Oh, sorry, I actually should specify.
Which Columbia?
It's in South Carolina, Columbia. All right. South Carolina's favored by 13, 13 and a half, depending on where you look. I'm going to lay 13 with South Carolina. I think this Missouri team is garbage. I think it is a hot, steaming pile of absolute poop. I think the Boston College close game is looking worse and worse by the week. I think their out of conference was terrible. I think a team like Texas A&M that was able to run the ball effectively absolutely murdered them. I think Vanderbilt should have won that game against them. I think this Missouri team is bad, all right? And I don't care if Brady Cook's playing. I don't care what's happening, right? This South Carolina football team is good. They're in ascension mode right now. They're going to beat the piss out of Missouri. So give me South Carolina minus 13.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. It is a little bit high for me because of the limitations for South Carolina. However, if Rocket Sanders has been playing like he has recently, he's still healthy. Yeah. If you told me Rocket Sanders 100% or close to it, I feel very good about what you're doing there and what South Carolina is doing. Man, oh man. First of all, they're going to need some style points, I think, because look away if you're an SEC hater, man. I mean, there's a real chance I think that they have an argument for the playoffs. Now they're going to have to start stringing together wins and impressive wins. But yeah, that's not crazy at all. I'm going to go back to a game we've previewed, and I'll go Tulane on the road, Tulane -7. Listen, I think the gap between Tulane and Notre Dame is much, much closer than the gap between Tulane and Navy. And I do think Tulane is kind of inching themselves into playoff conversations, deservingly so. This game's important. Style points will matter. I'm not worried about a backdoor cover. I just knocked on wood because that's probably going to bite me in the butt. However, I think this Navy team is very susceptible right now. I think Tulane gets after them. They run the football. They control the game. And they put Navy in a bad spot from the jump. Tulane -7, even on the road.
I like it. I like it a lot. I mean, we talked about. I'm with you. I'm on that side. I just wasn't a best bet for me. Here last week, I took an over on a total that, quite frankly, to me was ridiculous. I took Washington State and Utah State to go over 69 points. This week, Washington State and New Mexico's total is 72. I'm gonna go over. Just setting new records. I think this Washington State team is just an over machine.
And so is New Mexico, too.
So is New Mexico. Now, I think New Mexico, I forget who they played. Might have been Fresno State, like that line. I think it was like 78 or something like that. And I think it was like a 21 total points were like scored in that game or whatever. It was total dud. But I think Washington State, one, they need style points, right? Well, let's talk about Washington State. I mean, I don't think they have a realistic chance of making the playoffs, but that doesn't mean that the locker room doesn't believe that. So I think Washington State, New Mexico over 72 points. Let's go.
That's awesome. I think for college football's sake, so we hope you hit that because that would be a fun game for sure. Two coaches there that we love on this show, two quarterbacks that are very frisky on this show we like as well. Give me Clemson -10 on the road at Pitt. Pitt's in free fall, right? Pitt has been really struggling. Yep. Eli Holstein, playing against competent defenses, has really, really struggled.
Pumpkin.
What's a pumpkin?
Well, it's Cinderella, right? Clock strikes midnight.
Oh my God.
He has turned back into a pumpkin.
That is crazy. Regardless, though, yeah, Clemson -10. I think we saw there's a lot of fight left in this football team, which no surprise. Dabo Swinney's running a very good football program down there in terms of culture and buying and all that good stuff. Maybe they're not the elite upside that we think they were a couple years ago. However, they can cover 10 points against Pitt, and I feel pretty good about that.
I think so. And the fact that Clemson's -10 against Pitt, and they were like -11.5 against Louisville like the other week is wild to me. Wild.
Now it's home away split, but
home away split
is kind of crazy.
Doesn't matter to me. I think Louisville's a much better football team than Pitt. I'm going to go over to Arizona State +9. What are we talking about? I think when we picked it earlier, I think I meant to say it was actually 8.5. I think we're on the show. I'll record it at 8.5, but yeah, you're going to give me it at 9. Feed me that. I think they're going to win straight up. Let's go, Sun Devils. Let's go. Let's shake things up in the Big 12. How about it?
That would be crazy. We talked about that. That would be awesome. Shockwaves throughout the Big 12 there. A real spot for Kenny Dillingham to be able to make the college football playoff, make the Big 12 championship. Nonetheless, very good season for both those, or for Arizona State especially. My last pick here, we previewed this game, Louisiana Lafayette -7. What they can do in the passing game, I think, is very dangerous. Lance Lejeune is fantastic. Woolridge is fantastic. I think they get enough stops defensively, not in the red zone because, God, boy, oh boy. But if it's field goals, not touchdowns, that's a big difference. And that'll cover 7, I think. So Louisiana -7 in a game they have to win to keep their playoff hopes alive, to keep the Sun Belt, championships and their dominance this season alive as well. So let's go for it.
Yeah, I told you that I took South Alabama plus 7.5. I didn't bet it. If you get the South Alabama team, the not good version, I think Louisiana clears this. They might win by 20, almost 30 points. So I do like the volatility for this. I think more leans into your favor, right? Like the really volatile results of this game. Like South Alabama's not going to blow out Louisiana, right? Louisiana could blow out South Alabama. That could happen. So I think that does play a little bit into your favor. I did want to. Sorry, I was just looking at the Big 12. Arizona State's plus 1,700.
So basically, it's plus 1,700 to win out and to have BYU lose this week as 2.5-point favorites. Pretty much.
Basically, yeah.
Or Colorado to lose and just figure out some tiebreakers there. But
yeah,
because the tiebreaker would be common opponent Kansas State, which would go to Arizona State.
Yep.
Or maybe Texas Tech too, I guess. But
I don't know. It's I'm not going to do it, but maybe off air. All right, my last pick. It's going to be Tennessee, Georgia, under 48.5 total points. I know, like when you have a field of really good athletes, it's very easy to take overs in those games because you're relying on people to make explosive plays. Now, here's one thing with this: turnovers.
Scary.
But 40.5 seems like a lot of points, especially for a Tennessee team that wants to run the football and a Georgia team that is struggling to put the ball in the end zone against teams that have good defenses. So, look, this could be a 24-21 game. It's kind of the way that I see this playing out. Could be 27-21. Those are kind of the range of outcomes that I'm looking at for this game. It could be like 20-17, dude. This could be a low-scoring game. I like the under in this spot, and I thought about taking another play as well, but screw it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna actually add a 6th play here. Texas A&M -38.5. This is a homer pick, big time, but also. We're splitting reps at quarterback for New Mexico State. It is one of the worst football teams in college football. They have a garbage run defense. It is a night game at Kyle Field. 38.5 just does not seem enough to me. And I know you're thinking like, oh, explosive plays could happen. There's 2 teams in college football that have a worse passing offense than New Mexico State, and that is Army and Air Force. And by the way, New Mexico State throws 10 more passes on average than Air Force per game. And they throw almost 20 more passes than Army per game. So to say that New Mexico State's passing attack is the worst in college football is not an exaggeration at all. It is the worst. And they have a pretty decent run game, but what is that going to do for you, at Kyle Field when this team's coming off of a
bye week, right?
A bye week after a tough loss. I think they're going to be ready to absolutely piss on New Mexico State.
Is there's no quarterback change, right? Is it Marcel Reed? Or
I believe it's going to be Marcel Reed. I don't know that we know for sure, but that's my guess.
I will say New Mexico State on the road, SEC in November.
No.
No, yeah, I like this for you. I mean, I'm not going to take it, but I think it's good.
It's a total homer pick. I would say, like, if there was one pick of mine to fade for the audience that's listening to this, it'd probably be that one, just because It's a bit of homerism.
But you've been pretty locked on A&M, haven't you? Or no, you have not.
No, I've been the opposite of it. I
except
I
South Carolina. You had South Carolina.
I haven't bet on an A&M game. Well, actually, I'm like 0 and I'm 1 and 2. I bet on Arkansas plus 4.5. I took the under in the South Carolina game, and South Carolina basically hit that by themselves. And then I took A&M. I got them at plus like 3, like when they were against Notre Dame, and that finished close at like -3. But whatever. So yeah, this is probably a garbage pick. So you can probably throw this one out in the trash just because I said it on the show. It's probably not going to happen. So whatever, it is what it is. But guys, that's going to be it for us with our Week 12 previews. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure if you like the content, like the video. It's a pretty simple rule that we have here. And we appreciate the support. If you're listening on Spotify, you can give us a follow and a 5-star review. That'd be really awesome. Continue to just hop in the show right now. And things are closing down. We're talking about all these conference races, and you can see the excitement, from us on our end because it is just wild. The Sun Belt, the ACC, the Big 12, the SEC, the MAC, right? These conferences have wild races right now, and you need to be here for it. So thank you all so much. CD, anything for us on the way out?
No, thank you guys so much. Hope you guys enjoy the video and enjoy this week of college football.
Alrighty. We'll see y'all in the next one.